field. Two coming to get to 80 and 81. Bryant for 80. Just another one in many.
Oh, okay.
Kobe Bryant, 28 for 46 from the field. This would be 18 for 20 from the line and an 81-point game. 55 in the second half.
These two games are iconic in NBA history. They stand out amongst every other performance. These games shock the sports world and redefine what's possible in one game. It takes one hell of a player to give you a performance like that. But of these two games, which one stands out more? Which game was a more impressive feat? Which one was harder to achieve? Which one was better? Now, I know many of you probably have your answer in your head already. Let's go over the facts of both games first. Let's start off with Wilt Chamberlain's 100. On March 2nd, 1962, Wilt Chamberlain had 100 points. The Philadelphia Warriors beat the New York Knicks 169 to 147. The Warriors outscored the Knicks in every quarter but the second. Now, in terms of the stats of Wilt, obviously he had 100 points. He also had 25 boards and 2 assists. He shot a mind-boggling 36 of 63 from the field, putting him at a 57.1 field goal percentage. He shot 28 from 32 from the free throw line, putting him at an 87.5% free throw percentage. Wilt also played the full 48 minutes of that game. What's really crazy, in that season, Wilt averaged an unreal 48.5 minutes a game that year. Remember, there's only 48 minutes in a single game. Wilt Chamberlain only played under 48 minutes one time, and it's because he got thrown out of that game. He still played 40 minutes, however, that game. Anyways, that's about it for Wilt's 100-point night. In the 1961-62 season, the Philadelphia Warriors averaged 131.1 possessions per game. There was no count of the possessions for that single night, so we're going to use that 131.1 number for later in the video. Okay, now let's look at Kobe's 81-point night. On January 22nd, 2006, Kobe Bryant had 81 points against the Toronto Raptors. The Lakers beat the Raptors 122 to 104 that night. The Lakers were actually down 14 at half. The score was 63 to 49 at half. The score of the second half, however, was 73 to 41 in the Lakers' favor. Now let's look at Kobe's stats. Kobe Bryant obviously had 81 points that night. He also had 6 boards, 2 assists, 3 steals, and 1 block. In that game, Kobe shot 28 for 46 from the field. This means he had a 60.9% field goal percentage. He shot 18 from 20 from free throws at 90% and 7 from 13 from the three-point arc, 53.8%. Kobe played 41 minutes and 56 seconds that night. The Lakers had 95.4 possessions in total. Some of these other advanced stats might blow your mind. Kobe that night had a box plus minus of 33.6. For context, the highest box plus minus of all time in a single season was 13.72, which is held by Jokic last season. That night, Kobe had a usage percentage of 56.8. The highest usage of all time in a single season was 41.5, held by Russell Westbrook in 2017. Okay, now that we know a bit about each night, which game was more impressive? Now that we've gone through the basics of each game, let's take a look at some of the smaller, minute details that really expose the reality of both games. There's an argument to be made for both sides. First, let's start off with Wilt Chamberlain. I think the obvious thing that stands out from Wilt's famous performance is that no one has broken it before. This means that it's still 19 points more than Kobe's highest. A 19-point margin is still a lot of points in between. Not only did Wilt score more points, but Wilt was only able to score 2-pointers. He didn't have a 3-pointer to really stack his points faster like Kobe could. Kobe, in his 81-point game, had 7 threes. 7 extra points never hurts. And it wasn't just a walk in the park for Wilt. During that whole game, Wilt was dealing with constant double and even triple teams. And Wilt wasn't just bullying through everyone. Back in the 60s, refs were more willing to call offensive fouls. Many of his points came through finesse rather than just brute strength. This really takes out the argument that Wilt's 100 points was easy and took no skill. Besides just strictly basketball, I think Wilt's 100-point game is more iconic than Kobe's 81. It's one of, if not the most iconic performance in sports history. That really sums up the argument for Wilt Chamberlain. Now let's hear Kobe's side. I personally believe Kobe's 81-point performance, despite being 19 points less, was actually more impressive and harder to achieve. There's more reasons backing up Kobe than Wilt. One of the biggest arguments in Kobe's favor is the amount of possessions per game. Like I said before, in 1962, the Philadelphia Warriors averaged 131.1 possessions per game. In Kobe's 81-point night, the Lakers had 95.4 possessions. This gives Wilt so many more opportunities to score the ball than Kobe had. Once you factor in the amount of minutes each player played, Wilt's advantage gets even higher. Let's do a little math here. We'll just assume the average Wilt played 131.1 possessions that night. He also played the full game, meaning he played every possession. Kobe played 95.4 possessions that night, but he only played 41 minutes and 56 seconds of the full 48 minutes, which is only about 87.2% of the full game. If we then multiply 95.4, the amount of possessions in Kobe's game, by 0.872, the amount of the game Kobe played, and we can see Kobe only played 83.27 possessions that night, compared to Wilt's staggering 131.1. But wait, there's more. Now, using these numbers, we're going to calculate how many points Wilt would have in 2006 and vice versa. 83.27 possessions is only 63% of 131.1. So if we multiply 100 points by 63%, we can see that Wilt would have only had 63 points. I mean, don't get me wrong, 63 points is still a lot of points, but it just doesn't feel the same compared to 100. Well, you're forgetting, Wilt was a god amongst boys. Wilt was built different. Wilt Chamberlain that season averaged over 48 minutes a game. So let's say Wilt played the whole game. 95.4 possessions divided by 131 possessions equals 72.7% of the game, equals 72.7 points. So Wilt would have only put up 72 points if he played in 2006. And this is only based on possessions, no other factors that could even make the total smaller. Let's do it in the opposite way. Let's see how many points Kobe could have put up in 1962. We'll say that Kobe would have played the same 41 minutes and 56 seconds. 131 possessions multiplied by 87.2 of the game equals 114.31. So 114.31 possessions divided by 83.27 possessions equals an extra 1.372 possessions per one possession. Then if we multiply 81 by 1.327, we get 111.2 points. The era you play in has a large effect on how successful a player is. If Wilt Chamberlain played in 2006 and only had 72 points instead of 100, would we really remember him in the same light? If Kobe had a 111-point game, would we consider him the GOAT? The funny thing is this is only the first reason. There's really two more solid arguments for Kobe's game being more impressive. Kobe's game, for about 90% of the time, was a competitive game, meaning they couldn't just inflate Kobe's point total to break a record. They were actually playing to win. The Lakers were down by 14 at the end of the first half. Almost all of Kobe's points that night were geared towards winning basketball, not just stat padding. Wilt's game was another story. However, Wilt's game wasn't competitive by the fourth quarter. Wilt's team was really just spoon-feeding him points. From witnesses of the game, it was reported that the Warriors spent almost the entire fourth quarter fouling to get the ball back and force-feeding Chamberlain the ball. If Chamberlain played in 2006, they would have subbed him out by the end of the third quarter, preventing 100 points from ever happening. The last major reason why I believe Kobe's 81 was better than Wilt's 100 is Kobe's shots in that game were harder to make. Because Kobe was a whole 7 inches shorter than Wilt and weighed 60 pounds less than Wilt, it took more skill to score the ball. The majority of Kobe's points came from tough jumpers. Obviously, that takes more skill than using your God-given size and athleticism to finish over defenders with ease. This just makes it all the more impressive. Despite in Wilt Chamberlain's 100-point game, there were no three-pointers. He was facing triple teams all night. And of course, 100 points is more than 81. I believe Kobe's 81-point game was a more impressive feat because he played far less possessions than Wilt. The game was more competitive, and Kobe's shots were tougher to make and took more skill. If you guys enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe for more videos like these.